Welcome to a slow, beginner-friendly lesson on logging in Python, made for absolute beginners. Logs outlive print. Today you replace print with the logging module. Print is great for a quick check in IPython, but real programs use logging. Logging has levels: debug, info, warning, error, critical. You can turn levels on and off without touching the code. You can send logs to the console, to a file, or both. By the end you will know how to set up logging once at the top of your program, then use it everywhere with one consistent style. Levels change everything. Here is the project for this lesson. A folder called my project with a pyproject.toml and a single main.py file. Logging is part of the standard library, so we do not need extra modules or subfolders. One file is enough to learn the pattern. In a real project you would configure logging once in main and use it from every other module, but the basics all fit in a single file. One file to start. Create the project with uv-init my project, then move into the folder. The logging module is part of Python itself, so there is nothing to install. No uv-add is needed for this lesson. If later you want fancier formatting or rotating files you can add libraries like Rich or Logaru, but the standard logging module covers everything you need today. Open main.py and you are ready. Just uv-init. The run rule is the usual one. Open main in your editor, write the logging code, and run with uv-run python main.py. Watch the console as the program runs. You will see log lines appear with the level, the logger name, and your message. Later in the lesson we will send those same logs to a file instead of the console, and you will see how trivially logging switches destinations without touching the calls. Watch the console. Print is fine for quick checks. Logs stay with you when the program grows. Print fades, logs stay. Why switch from print to logging? 5 reasons. 1. Logging has levels: debug, info, warning, error, critical. You tag each message by importance. 2. You can turn levels on or off in one place without changing the calls. 3. Every line gets a timestamp and the name of the logger for free. 4. One log call can go to the console, a file, or both at the same time. 5. Logging is part of the standard library, so there is nothing to install. 5 solid reasons. Print is for a quick check while you are debugging. You write print, run, see the value, then delete the print. Logging is for messages you want to keep. You write logger.info, run, and the message goes to a file that stays around. When something breaks in production, you read the log file and see what happened. Print disappears when the program ends. Logging persists. A side-by-side. Here is the simplest logging call. Import logging at the top, then call logging.warning with a string. Call logging.error with another string. By default, Python shows only warnings and above on the console. The format is the level name, the word root, then your message. Root is the default logger. We will replace it with a named logger later in the lesson. For now, notice that info and debug calls would not appear, because the default level is warning. Import and call. Logging defines 5 levels. Debug for detailed internal state, useful only while diagnosing problems. Info for confirmation that things work as expected. Warning for something unexpected, when the program is still working but you should pay attention. Error for a serious problem, when something failed. Critical for a fatal error, when the program cannot continue. Pick the level that matches the importance of the message. 5 levels of urgency: debug, info, warning, error, critical. Each level says how loudly to speak. Pick the right volume. Basic config is the one-time setup at the top of your program. Pass level equals logging.debug to show every level from debug upward. Pass a format string to control what each line looks like. The format uses % placeholders, time for the timestamp, level name for the level, message for the text. After basic config, every log call uses this level and format. Call basic config once, at the very top, before any logging calls. One-time setup. Format placeholders let you control each line. Time adds a timestamp. Name is the logger name, which becomes useful when you have multiple modules logging at once. Level name is the level, like info or warning. Message is your text. Separate them with pipes, commas, or spaces, whatever your team prefers. A consistent format makes log files easy to scan when something goes wrong. What each line shows. Logging to a file is one extra argument: pass file name equals app.log to basic config, and every log line goes to that file instead of the console. Now when you run the program, nothing prints to the console. Open app.log in your editor and you see each line with its timestamp and level. This is how production programs keep history. The log file grows over time, which is why larger projects use rotating file handlers. Add file name. The same log call can go to the console, to a file, or both at once. One source, many destinations. Think of levels as a threshold you set. When you configure the level to warning, every call at warning and above is allowed through. Debug and info calls are dropped silently. Set the level to debug, and everything comes through. The level acts like a volume knob. Lower the threshold to see more detail, raise it to see only serious problems. The same calls in your code produce different output depending on the configured level. Threshold, not category. Instead of using the root logger directly, create a named logger in each module. Logger equals logging.getLogger, pass .name. .name is the module name, like my project.utilities. Each module gets its own logger with its own name. This matters when you read the logs, you can see which module produced each line. You can also turn levels up or down per module, which is invaluable when you need to silence a noisy library. One per module. Sometimes a third-party library logs too much. The library erlib3, for example, logs at debug level by default. Get its logger by name and call set level warning. Now only warnings and above from erlib3 appear, while your own code keeps logging at the level you configured. This is the power of named loggers. Each one has its own threshold, and you can tune them independently without changing your code. Quiet a noisy module. A practical guide to picking a level. Debug is for internal state you only need while diagnosing, like payload sizes. Info is for normal milestones, like a user logging in. Warning is for something unexpected but recoverable, like retrying after a timeout. Error is for a failed operation when the app keeps running, like failing to save a record. Critical is for a fatal problem, like being out of disk space. When in doubt, pick the lower level. You can always raise it later. Pick with intent. Some habits that pay off. Configure logging once at the top of main, before any other code runs. Use one named logger per module, logger equals logging.getLogger .name. Pick the level that matches the importance of the message, so a reader of the log can scan by level. In any real program, send logs to a file, not just the console, so you have history to inspect when something breaks. The console is for development, the file is for production. Habits that pay off. Logging has 5 levels: debug, info, warning, error, critical. Call basic config once at the top of main to set the threshold and format. Pass file name to send logs to a file instead of the console. Use a named logger per module so you can trace each line to its source. Print is for quick checks you throw away. Logging is for messages you want to keep. Logging in one breath. Next lesson we separate configuration from code. Real programs read settings from outside, API keys, file paths, feature flags. We start with os.environ, the dictionary of environment variables. Then we meet the .env pattern, where you keep settings in a file that is never committed to Git. After that we pull everything together in a capstone lesson, a small command line tool built from modules with logging and configuration. Configuration comes next. If you want a quick practice, configure logging to write to a file called practice.log at the info level. Log an info message saying practice run complete. Run the program with uv run python main.py. Nothing appears on the console. Open practice.log in your editor and you see your line with a timestamp. One config change moved every log from the console to a file, without touching the log calls. Log to a file. Quick self-check. Can you name the 5 logging levels from lowest to highest? Can you write a basic config call that sets the level to debug and the format to include a timestamp? Can you switch log output from the console to a file by changing one argument? Can you explain why named loggers are more useful than the root logger? If any feels shaky, rewatch the matching part. Say each out loud. Thanks for learning the logging module. Next we separate configuration from code using environment variables. See you in the next lesson.